Yeah, that looks great. She is 20 years old.
He is 62 years old.
She's broken up with 2 boyfriends in the past 2 years.
He's happily married, as far as one can make out.
She has come into the hospital with a broken leg.
He has worked in 3 good hospitals.
But is chatty, friendly, and you could say...
His colleagues vouch for his good character.
You could say she's a little flirtatious with the others in the ward and the doctors.
His secretary has never reported any discomfort in working with him.
She was in the hospital bed. He came in at 8 p.m. and said he needed to ensure a repeat physical examination before the surgery the next day.
Yes, he did come to the ward for rounds at that time, and the patient told him that she was anxious as she was having chest pain.
She was surprised as the nurse would usually accompany him, but having been never posted for surgery before, she thought it was routine practice.
No, he did not call the nurse as he knew she would be busy. And no, he did not write anything in the case notes as her heart sounds were fine.
She felt uncomfortable with the way he was touching her while listening to her heart sounds. But, more hands than stethoscope.
He's sure this girl is lying just to get him into trouble. You see, she flirted with him, and when he did not respond, she got angry with him.
When he finally left, she just lay down on the bed and covered her face with the sheets.
The nurse found her like this when she came to check in on her much later. The nurse asked her what was wrong.
She didn't want to say anything.
The nurse. Well, she has a grudge against him because he reprimanded her for her work.
She'd felt so bad.
The nurse asked her if she was in some pain or should she call a doctor.
She broke down and finally confided in the nurse.
The nurse told her supervisor, and then the issue got reported to the hospital inquiry committee.
See, no one should believe this nurse. She's out to get the doctor. He had reprimanded her about her work 6 months ago. And also, the nurses here are mostly from local Pradesh, and this doctor was from some other Pradesh. So the doctor is being targeted as he's from a different state in India.
Inquiry? What do the witnesses say?
Yes, this girl is flirtatious with male patients, ward boys, and male doctors.
What do they mean by flirtatious?
Well, flirtatious. She chats, smiles with the boys.
So?
But did you know that she has a history of psychiatric illness?
So what? This wasn't a hallucination.
Regarding the nurse who escalated the issue, Yes. She was reprimanded over a work issue 6 months ago. And yes, she does belong to a different state.
The colleague who had worked with the doctor in the last 2 years, well, he vouches strongly for his good character. Very strongly.
His secretary?
Oh, she said she has never had a problem with him.
Who would you believe?
The flirtatious girl?
Or the respectable doctor?
Wait, before you decide, you need to hear something.
In Canada, some 25 years ago, an international authority on eating disorders, Dr. Paul Garfinkel, reflected on his experiences with his colleague and friend's sexual misconduct. He says of Dr. David Garner,
I trusted him both as a researcher and as a human being. In 1986, after we published our book on eating disorders, David came into my office. He said there was a problem.
An ex-patient had complained that he had become sexually involved with her.
It was all a fabrication, he assured me.
This young woman was obviously distorting the nature of their relationship.
The Ontario Board of Examiners in Psychology was going to hold a hearing into the complaint. Naturally, I supported him. I even agreed to be a character witness at the hearing.
1 year later, however,
The day before the hearing, David came into my office, this time accompanied by a lawyer.
He looked shaken, weepy, and agitated, in striking contrast to his normally confident and playful manner. David has something he wants to tell you, the lawyer said.
it turned out that the young woman had produced hotel receipts from New York City that proved that she and David had gone together.
It was true, David admitted.
He had had sex with his patient.
I felt sick. This betrayal of trust with me and especially with his patient made me feel nauseated. I was angry with him, but he was so weepy and I felt that I needed to protect him. I worried about his safety. I took him for dinner, but it was an awful night.
Inquiry report. The board imposed a 2-year suspension on him. The issue of trust is paramount, it said.
Dr. David breached this trust with his young client, whom he knew to be dependent on him. This was unpardonable, especially since David, for the previous 14 months, had denied everything and implied that the very fragile Miss X was a liar.
After the hearing, Dr. Paul Garfinkel reflected,
How could I have missed this? I blamed myself for not knowing. And when David's story became public, I felt betrayed and humiliated.
But that was 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago, and in Canada. Now let's see what some doctors have to say today in India.
Good morning.
Good morning,
ma'am.
Sunita.
So today we are going to have a short interview with Dr. Tanya Machado, who's our clinical psychologist here, and we will be discussing a little on sexual boundary violations.
What is so surprising, Sunita, is the victims always are people who have a personality disorder. So if by chance the patient makes an accusation, you can always say, oh, she always lies, or she's promiscuous. You understood? They are so clever in choosing and selecting patients. Now this particular patient had a personality disorder. And she also has a history of lying. She told me that that particular gentleman had molested her, touched her. And now when I look back on it, I'm shocked with my reaction. I defended that guy like a tigress. The reason is because he was a good friend of mine. I trusted him implicitly. And I just could not believe that, that such a thing could happen. And of course, I victimized that patient again. I double, triple victimized that patient.
What do you mean?
She was victimized as a child, and when there's some particular incident happened, I made her feel as if it's not true, so that she's lying, and I didn't I didn't give importance to what she was saying. I did not respect her, did not respect what she's feeling. Now when I think about it, I feel terrible about it. And I said, absolutely no. I said, I know this gentleman so well, he'll never do it. And I defended him. I could not, and I felt terrible even to tell him about it. Now when I think about it, I feel, oh Christ, I can imagine what patients go through. It is not only the patient's trust, my trust, that I am let down. I feel foolish. I feel betrayed. I feel as if I've been taken advantage of. I trusted him. And later on, many, many years later, I've had other patients telling me about this particular gentleman. So now when I look back on what had happened, I can imagine what the patient, and can you imagine what the patient would have felt? That nobody trusts and nobody takes what she feels seriously. And every time we sort of don't give importance to what she felt, we are again re-victimizing her. So that is, a problem.
Do you sometimes face ethical dilemmas in these issues?
It's a very important question, because I've just come from talking to a patient who has gone through similar experience, but not with the health professional. It's not with the health professional. It's with somebody she trusted. Now, unfortunately, see, this is the problem we have. Now, this patient thought she was in love with that boy. Thought. You get it? There is lots of messages that are sent, lots of things that are sent. But the patient implicitly trusted that gentleman, and she was abused by him and beaten up by him, and certain vile acts were done on her by him. Now, my dilemma is, patient doesn't want to give a complaint, patient's mother doesn't want to give a complaint, because they say that I have another younger daughter, and people will get to know. Now, how do I force the patient to, as it is a medical legal case, it's been made into a medical legal case. The patient says, I don't want to give a complaint, it's a good man, I have treated, she's a patient. You get it? She has got some other psychiatric problems. The patient is feeling foolish, patient is feeling guilty, patient is feeling absolutely sorry. And my dilemma is, how far do I push her? Because I know the system is not going to be good to her. Because there is evidence of her emails, the evidence of her, you get it, certain acts that she has done in her innocence. You got it? So this is going to be sensationalized.
So do you feel, ma'am, it helps to train young medical students during the MBBS course, or young clinical psychologists, psychiatric social workers, counselors, on this issue? Do you feel it helps?
100% helps, because this is not the only episode. I have had many more episodes where people have really taken advantage of patients, especially patients who are vulnerable. And it is very important that we make our students aware of what's happening. Sometimes, I'm not saying there are no false accusations. I've also come across patients or people who accuse falsely. Now, very important is, some young doctors don't realize that even their talk can be an abuse. You get it? We associate sexual abuse only with rape. It is definitely not only rape. It is, as I told you from the beginning, starts with vulgar talk, touch, all those things. I'm not saying all doctors are the same. They belong to the general population. There are good doctors, bad doctors, all sorts of doctors. Second important thing is, tell them about experience of the patient. So let them feel, it's very important that they learn empathy, to empathize with other person's feelings.
So maybe we could end with a message.
I want the young students and the young trainees to know that it exists. Please don't push it under the carpet. So there is a conspiracy of silence. Every professional says, in my profession it doesn't happen, it happens in another profession. So it's very important that we don't do that. But it happens all the time.
But there are many injustices that occur in the world, and sometimes you need to take a stance and do the right thing. So who would you believe? The flirt or the doctor?